We are going to talk about the Siliguri Corridor, better known as Chicken's Neck. And the issue is the project on Teesta River. The Teesta River has also been a source of diplomatic negotiations between India and Pakistan for long. Now, but today it has become the center of an even bigger geopolitical contest. In a major strategic decision, Bangladesh has awarded the Teesta River Management Project to China, choosing Beijing over New Delhi for one of its most significant infrastructure projects. The project is estimated to cost nearly 9,000 crore. China will provide soft loan of around 7,000 crore, repayable over the next 5 years, while the remaining cost will be borne by Bangladesh. What's significant is that the decision comes after Dhaka rejected an earlier 9,000 crore Indian proposal which had been offered to previous Sheikh Hasina government. Instead, the new government under Prime Minister Tariq Rahman has signed a government-to-government agreement with Power China, one of the Beijing's largest state-owned infrastructure companies. The project is already moving ahead. A team of nearly 50 Chinese engineers and technical experts have arrived in Bangladesh to begin survey of the Teesta Basin. Their task is not just river management. The project includes dams, embankments, river training, silt removal and other major infrastructure work that could reshape the Teesta Basin. But the debate is not only about development. It is also about geography. The project area lies barely 10 to 12 kilometers from the Indian border and roughly 22 kilometers from the Siliguri Corridor, the narrow stretch of land often called India's chicken neck, which connects the mainland to the 8 northeastern states. Now, I'll come back to the issue. Now, the issue is the proximity. The proximity makes this subject very, very sensitive. Why? Security experts believe that the long-term presence of a major Chinese state-owned company so close to this vital corridor deserves close attention. The timing is equally significant. Even as Bangladesh awards this project to China, the two countries are also expanding defense cooperation. Reports suggest that the Dhaka and Beijing are discussing the acquisition of Chinese fighter jets, while China is already involved in developing a submarine base at Cox's Bazar and assisting with infrastructure at Lal Monirhat Air Base. Taken together, these developments indicate China's engagement with Bangladesh is no longer confined to trade or investment. It is increasingly extending into strategic infrastructure and defense. For India, therefore, the Teesta project is no longer just about water management. It is about changing geopolitical balance in its immediate neighborhood. The question is, has India lost a crucial strategic opportunity in Bangladesh? Is the Teesta project simply an infrastructure partnership or another sign of China's expanding footprint in South Asia and India's soft underbelly? And what does this mean for India's security, especially around the strategically vital Siliguri Corridor? On this issue, I am joined by Ambassador Veena Sikri, High Commissioner to Bangladesh, former High Commissioner to Bangladesh, Major General Sanjay Soy, defense expert, and Anushka Saxena, research analyst at the Takshashila Institution, who will take us through how PLA does this military-civilian synergy. But first, I'll go to Ambassador Sikri. Madam, Chinese engineers or PLA's engineering corps working 22 kilometers away from Chicken's Neck, a project that was supposed to be given to India is now with the Chinese, and taken this together with, madam, the development that's happening, that all the tourist projects in Chittagong Hill Tract are also being given to the Chinese. How should we look at it, madam?
I think taken together, these do constitute a major security threat. And I'd like to recall a little bit that the Chinese has been showing interest in this Teesta River Management Project for quite some years now. And even when Sheikh Hasina was Prime Minister, they put a lot of pressure on her to give this project to them. And there was similarly exchange of visits, and there were similarly discussions of giving the project to them, etc. But India made it very clear to the Sheikh Hasina government that this was a major security aspect for India. It was a security red line, and India would not accept Chinese presence so close to the Indian border, particularly in the very sensitive Siliguri Corridor, the so-called Chicken's Neck. And, if you just look at the north, how close this is to Doklam, where again the Chinese are building villages and so on and so forth. So I think we have to recognize that Sheikh Hasina took on board India's security concerns. And when she came to India in June 2024, just a few days or weeks before she was ousted in a military coup, she actually, in the joint statement issued in June 2024, both the Mongla Port project and the Siliguri, the Teesta River Water Management Project in Bangladesh were allotted to India. And Sheikh Hasina said specifically that she is respecting India's security red lines. Now, when Tariq Rahman gets elected and becomes prime minister, he has made a number of assurances to the Indian government. But none of these have been implemented so far. The very disappointing performance. He has not actually, he did not come to India on his first visit. He has not reversed any of the negative decisions taken by Mohammed Yunus during his 18-month stay, when he had, reversed a lot of earlier projects on connectivity and so on. And worst of all, he is not taking any account of India's security red lines. And then he goes off to China on his first visit, combines it with Malaysia. And then there you have this document which comes out. And the goal of the Tariq Rahman government is that even after this joint statement has been issued, which indicates that both the Teesta River Management Project in Bangladesh and the Mongla Port Modernization and Development Project are being given to China, even after the document, they're still telling the Indian government, oh, don't worry, nothing has happened, this is totally preliminary, forget about it. They're trying to really downplay it. And now you're saying the engineers are actually arriving in the Tista basin area. I think it's a very major security threat. India has to wake up and smell the coffee.
Okay, General Soy, can you please decode it for our viewers? Not many people would know. Why do we call it chicken's neck? Why is it important for us? And in this context, explain both the present, I will not use the word intrusion, but we have to see it in the context of Doklam.
Yeah, in fact, you see the chicken's neck, you can say Siliguri Corridor is a 22-kilometer which actually connects the northeast India with the rest of the India, which is a very narrow corridor, and it is vulnerable, especially the kind of developments which are taking place in Bangladesh with the Chinese help. It is not only this, in fact, I'll agree with Ambassador Veena Sikri that none of the promises, none of the decisions which were taken by the caretaker government have been reversed by Tariq Rahman after he is taken over. And in fact, the first country he visited was China. So, with the Teesta River project, which is because of its proximity to Siliguri Corridor, it becomes a vulnerable, India's vulnerability increases and Chinese presence over there. Definitely, India resists the hackle. And second thing is, I would also like to highlight a couple of other things where they are joining hands together with Bangladesh. The tilt of Bangladesh is clearly towards Beijing, whether the Lal Moner Hat airport, airbase, which was disused and which China is thinking of carrying out the renovation, which is just about 15 to 20 kilometers from Indian border and about just about 135 kilometers from Siliguri corridor. And the Bangladesh has emerged as the second largest buyer from China after Pakistan, whether it is corvettes, tanks, anti-aircraft, anti-ship missiles, anti-aircraft missiles, or now they are talking of J-10, talking of purchasing 20 J-10 fighter aircraft. So their tilt towards China is very, very clear, very visible. So we have to take note of it. We have made overtures to Bangladesh when swearing-in ceremony was there. Then also, after that also, we have been making attempts to normalize the relation. But at present situation is that with the ISI of Pakistan and China spreading the wings with the loan diplomacy and money power, it is a matter of concern for us, and we need to take note of it.
Okay.
And though we have already taken action as far as strengthening of Siliguri corridor is concerned, whether it is the deployment of additional troops, the deployment of strengthening the defenses over there, and also thinking of an additional railway line in that area. So India is taking measures, but definitely it is a matter of concern for us.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, Karthik.
Anushka, take us through how PLA operates through these civilian companies, because this Power China company is also operating in Africa, and it operates with military strength. It's indentured so-called inland labor, which comes from the prisons and various other parts. How do they operate? Break it down for our viewers, that so that they understand it's just not a civilian operation. How does this fusion takes place? Break it down for us.
Right. Thanks so much for that. I think, yes, there are two components to the dual use aspect of this kind of an investment, and starting from the feasibility study and ending with the actual construction of the infrastructure around the comprehensive project on Tista itself. One is, of course, as you alluded to, the idea of the kind of company Power China is. Now, Power China was built with the merger of two other companies that were at that point the hydraulic arms of China's energy and hydro project or power project architecture, right? And so Power China has now emerged as this big state-owned enterprise that operates in tandem with a lot of party state affiliated regulatory modes, preferences, and the likes. Even if it in and of itself is not a defense state-owned enterprise, we must know, for example, the kind of bounds that are placed on its activities. For example, if we go back to the statement Yan Qiong, our of the company's former head made in 2020 when he was talking about the Yarlung Fangpo project, he said that it is not just a hydrological project or a power project. It's also a project that pertains to national security and ecological security concerns. And under Xi Jinping, everything is anyway pan-securitized. Everything is security, including a project that one should otherwise assume is purely for energy generation or ecological uses, right? So that's the kind of approach the company takes to the projects that it undertakes, right? And so, in and of itself, the company may not be a defense SOE, but it definitely adheres to the ideas of national security as generated from the party state, and it is liable to cede all data collected in its operations under the National Intelligence Law, Articles 7 to the CPC as and when necessary, which brings me to the second layer of the dual use aspect of this, which I was referring to earlier, which is the kind of operational data they can collect if the feasibility study is conducted. The data on bathymetry, soil, river flows, timing, its composition, and the likes, so close to the Siliguri corridor, and especially the corridor's southern reaches, is kind of precisely the kind of data perhaps the PLA could use for a ground or a naval operation. And that's exactly what our concern with Chinese dual use civilian scientific ships in the Indian Ocean region is as well, right? The kind of data they collect on salinity, on water temperatures, is very meaningful for submarine and mine laying operations. The same way the potentially operationally valuable data Power China can correct during its year-long or 2-year-long feasibility study has dual use implications, and then combine that with the legislative and regulatory architecture, and you get the recipe for disaster.
Very beautifully explained, Anusha. Very beautifully explained. In context of the data seeding, that was a very important point. But Ambassador Sikri, what I really want to know from you, everyone knows that there is a debt trap. I'm forgetting the name of one of the Central Asian countries. I think it was Tajikistan. They had to cede a part of their land to repay the loan under the Road and Belt Initiative. I think Cambodia still has to pay money. In fact, they had to cede some land and dams to China because they couldn't repay the loan because it was built on the Mekong Delta. So when they understand that the China is the new colonizer, and if you can't repay, they either take in form of land or they take your physical infrastructure from you. It has been documented. Why is Bangladesh giving in? I mean, so is this part of political corruption? Knowing well that, India never does that. China does that. Why have they given in? I don't think they have the capacity to pay back 7,000 crore like that.
Absolutely, absolutely. We have the example of Hambantota Port in Sri Lanka, which is a classic example of how, China has now taken the land,
Yes.
because the Hambantota Port was given to China at a huge
For 99 years, ma'am.
cost.
Yes, I remember. 99 years, the land has gone to China now.
Yes, because because China, Sri Lanka couldn't pay back the money, and now when you're saying the 7,000 crore soft loan from China has only a 5-year repayment period, which
Yes.
is far too small. I mean, Dhaka will never be able to repay 7,000 crores in 5 years. They have so much debt overhang. In fact, they're going deeper and deeper into debt, and America is helping them by getting more and more loans from the IMF and other places, and America is possibly even giving them some additional grants. So actually, we are facing a very major security threat in this area, because if China decides to take over this land, because they are planning this project that they are taking over involves a lot of building of embankments, building of storage capacity, building of maybe a dam or another barrage, and so on. So there will be a lot of expenditure shown by the Chinese in this area, and they're fully capable of taking over the land. So I think that, and this is very, very near to, as you said, to the Siliguri Corridor, to Doklam, to the entire very sensitive area.
Ambassador
So
Sikri, Ambassador Sikri is, you're the only person who had been rooting for Sheikh Hasina, whereas the Indian establishment, they have been trying to soft pedal the issue. They have, sent a political representative to reach the other side. But you, since last so many years, have been saying that she is the only friend which India has there. Is that the reason why she got kicked out through the coup?
Definitely part of the reason, because what has been happening in Bangladesh ever since the July-August 2024 coup has been going against India's security interests. All the decisions that Mohammed Yunus took, as you know, he was just a puppet. He is a puppet. He was backed by the Jamaat-e-Islami. All the decisions that Jamaat-e-Islami forced him to take meant a negativity for India in terms of trade, in terms of connectivity, in terms of project investment. And the presence of Pakistan in Bangladesh has grown to such an extent that it's now getting back into a confederal status, just as it was before 1971. In fact, in the beginning of the show, I noticed that you mentioned Pakistan instead of Bangladesh for this Siliguri corridor. Purely an error, but I mean, it's a sign of things to come, actually, because Pakistan is determined to strengthen its presence. Today, we have the presence of huge number of radical organizations, radicalized Islamist organizations in Bangladesh. They have brought in about 15 lakh flags, and they're waving them frantically to intimidate the population, particularly the women. The attempt to radicalize the women is one of the biggest efforts.
Ma'am, I'm going to do a special program later. I've got a report whereby it says that the Chinese men, the way they have settled in areas around Vladivostok, which I had the opportunity to see 8 years ago, the marriages are taking place in Chittagong Hill Tract area. And it's
Yes,
a reality.
absolutely. So actually, we have to be very clear now with Bangladesh government. We have to tell them this is a security threat. We will not allow this to go ahead. That's the kind of position we will have to take. You know what? The presence of China in the Bay of Bengal is now alarming. They want this Mongla project, which is very close to the Indian border again. It's very close to a very sensitive part of the Indian border, which is in West Bengal border. And we have built a Khulna-Mongla railway line. We have built up to the Indian border, where we were going to use it for trade and for increasing our connectivity with Bangladesh. But now it's gone to China. And in the Bay of Bengal, China has built a 8-bay submarine station for Bangladesh in Chittagong.
Okay.
And Bangladesh has bought just 2 second-hand submarines from China. The rest will be for Chinese visiting submarines.
General sir, before I come to you, Anushka, what I want to understand from you, why has the Chinese government or the Chinese party under Xi taken such a hard anti-India stand, shift from his earlier predecessors? Were we able to not decipher the man?
Yeah, well, I think for China, the interest in India's neighborhood serves a bunch of purposes, right? One, in and of itself, is a domestic issue of overcapacity of extending long arm jurisdiction, of extending investments that are overblowing at home. And this was at least the case when the Belt and Road Initiative was first launched in 2013, right? Which is why China continued to seek out partners in Africa, in the Indian neighborhood, in Sri Lanka, the Maldives, Bhutan, Nepal, and of course Bangladesh, right? And sometime around 2020, because BRI projects were floundering because of a lot of the debt repayment issues and the likes, the narrative at some point was shifted to small but beautiful projects. Nonetheless, the overhang of these investments, because of this domestic overcapacity and this need to project it outwards and build partnerships for a host of reasons, remains. And I think Bangladesh is one of those countries where it manifests in the sense that, as Ms. Sikri also pointed out, the Mongla port, which of course was initially also designed and was under discussion since 2007 for.
Mongla Port, we have the Americans now have bombed Chabahar. Our Kaladan project is in tatters. I've been given to believe that very soon the AA, which is being protected, promoted by China, is about to take over the Rakhine state in Myanmar. It will be a reality soon in next couple of weeks. This report has come out.
Yeah, no, I think the interesting thing about what the Chinese do, and where I think the Indian state kind of has to deal with the card that it has been dealt with, is the idea that they are not afraid of dealing with all sorts of stakeholders within one country. They sell weapons to both the rebel army in Myanmar and the junta that fights them, right? And the junta's plane was taken down by the manpad that the Chinese sold to the Three Brotherhood Alliance.
Yes.
So irony abound, but they trade. So the same way they dealt with Sheikh Hasina, they dealt with Yunus, they're dealing with the PNP now, and they have no qualms about who they give money to. Which brings me to the second kind of payback that they've earned as part of this need to do outreach and need to invest and take it forward, right? Which is the anti-India component that comes in. Of course, the expanding footprint in the neighborhood, and not just in Bangladesh, really massively in Pakistan, as we saw during Operation Sindoor. A lot, the Chinese were referring to the Pakistani armed forces as a made in China army. And so essentially for India, whenever we're dealing with Bangladesh or Pakistan
Okay.
in military terms or economic terms, it's kind of like a proxy engagement with the Chinese, right? So that obviously has benefits in terms of keeping India bogged down one way or another, and at the same time build these partnerships that eventually support them on fronts like Taiwan. So the Bangladeshis recently said last year, if I'm not wrong, that Taiwan is an inalienable part of China. So these are the kind of concessions they're extracting in exchange for all the other benefits they're getting, like bogging India down, but also sending these investments outward and securing support for their own
Okay.
domestic and external
Okay, Janus,
ambition.
so do we need to create a specific, like there was a talk of creating multiple divisions in Northeast. So the the recruitment, it started during the UPA time, then it stalled, then again the whole idea came back again that we need to divide the entire part into multiple stations. Do we need to do that in context of Bangladesh with this special mobilization?
No, Kartike. In fact, earlier it was Pakistan and China. Now the Bangladesh is also, as Anushka has brought out, is also acting like a proxy of China, and they are going all out. In fact, the kind of support which China is giving, the kind of weapon system, the way ISI and China is active in Bangladesh, and as Ambassador Veena Secret brought out that Bangladesh Chitgaon port. These two ports give them access to Bay of Bengal. Then on the other side is Gwadar. On the other side is Hambantota. On the other side is Myanmar. So they're doing the complete string of pearls sort of thing around India, and we need to take care of it. And you have rightly brought out on tactical level, I would say, lower strategic level, we need to have additional troops, additional deployment, and have a command and control setup in a manner that we are able to take on China if need be through Bangladesh. Bangladesh we will be able to take on, but the kind of support which is, China is providing, and we have seen during Operation Sindoor, it has been admitted that China provides them with a real-time intelligence, real-time communication, real-time locations. So if on one side Pakistan, on the other side Bangladesh, we have to be prepared according to that. And that is with the lone diplomacy, China would be looking forward to the same kind of rights which they did with Hambantota, which they did with Gwadar. Now the Mangla port and Chatgaon port are on their views, and Chatgaon port is
Sir,
the one
can,
which
can,
could.
I, can, I, can I stop you for a minute? Madam, I know it's only a minute I left. I really need to know. There are always red lines for any country. What should be the Indian red line in Bangladesh? If they acquire some land in Bangladesh, like lease, what should be the Indian red line? You know, Putin made Ukraine the red line. Every country has a red line.
Yes. India's red lines are very clear, what we explained even earlier. For projects near the Indian border, we're not going to accept them being given to either Pakistan or China. Pakistan or China are hostile countries. Mongla port is definitely within India's zone. It is a day sailing from Kolkata port. We have to say there's no question of a naval presence of China in Mongla or of Chinese military presence, because this engineer corps is all their army engineers. They're basically going to be a lot of military officers there. And we have to prevent it from happening before it takes place. It's too late once the whole thing starts. We have to put our foot down right now, as we had done with Sheikh Hasina, and she respected our security red lines. I am in favor of any government that respects India's security red lines. But if a government is going to willfully ignore Indian security red lines, then we have to take note and sit up and know that they are up to no good.
Absolutely. I think that should be the closing note of this program. Thank you, Anushka. Thank you, General Soin. Thank you, Ambassador Sikri, for always making time for my program. Thank you.